Over the years I have tried many different fleet modifications. Codea, LitCube's MLCC, they all have had their moments and they shine in various ways. But Mayhem's fleet overhaul is probably the most integrated system I have seen. There are no additional screens, it introduces no new complicated terms or concepts. It basically just makes vanilla fleets work for the first time. It also expands them a bit. Now, I want to make one thing clear. The system doesn't magically add a brain to your ships. You will still see them making strange decisions. For example, fighters taking the fight to cap ships in a stretched formation where the first bunch dies until the rest arrives. Half a dozen cap ships will be fine pounding away at factories in one end of the sector while a small group of your frigates struggles to survive at the other end. To make a long story short, using fleets will cause you some losses, even cap ships, because in some occasions emergency jumps can take them fairly long when many things are going on at the same time. Just accept that. It's a war, people will die. But that's the reason why I didn't use fleets much until my shipyard had a reliable economic foundation. To start, you have to promote a ship to become fleet commander. Interacting with him will allow you to send special fleet orders to any desired number of subordinates. You can add fleet members like you do in vanilla, but it can also be done by ordering ships in advance using the backlog tool. The shipyard will begin construction as soon as it has the required resources. Finished ships will wait until they can also equip their shielding and weapons. Then they add enough fuel to reach the fleet and join it. I will show the whole process in the next video. As for fleet composition, you can use any ship you like. For most fleets I recommend to use a heavy battle cruiser with very strong shielding. Reason being that the commander will often make first contact with the enemy. They also have the biggest cargo space of all ships and can carry a large fuel reserve for the whole fleet. And they are easy to spot in a large fleet battle. You can also set a hotkey to select the nearest fleet commander. Most interactions with your fleet can be done through the commander. Let's take a look which fleet commands are available. A call to arms will rally all fleet ships to the commander's current location. They take an aggressive escort formation and will listen to additional fleet orders. All ships do a fuel check and go get more energy if needed. Damaged vessels will visit one of your shipyards, repair themselves and join the fleet afterwards. So this command basically makes the whole fleet combat ready, and whatever the individual ships were doing before, they now gather in one spot. My shipyard is very far off from most of the action, so I have set up a second ship hangar in Montalar. Fleet members can come here for repairs. The sector doesn't build new ships because it only has a low population and I wanted to add some defensive perks. Refueling after a call to arms can also happen by fleet ships simply exchanging energy cells. They will manage this on their own. You only need one fleet member with a transporter device. I recommend to install it on all commanders. Mayhem now features a resupply drone which will refuel all ships in a sector. You can unlock it with a perk. Another way can be a courier tasked to deliver energy cells to fleet commanders. This way your fleets will always have a very large fuel reserve. The fill order ensures that he won't leave the energy hub until he has the designated amount in his cargo bay. After unloading, another fill order at the fleet commander's battle cruiser ensures that he can always make his way back to the energy hub, wherever the fleet may operating now. But you should use a strong shielded courier if you don't plan to pause him during heavy action. After a call to arms has been given, you may issue fleet orders through your commander. Note that ships which get a command afterwards will not listen to fleet orders anymore. It's like removing them from the fleet for the time being. Great if you suddenly need a destroyer somewhere else. It will return when the next call is made. You can also make individual ships join back into the fleet. Before the fleet as a whole jumps anywhere, small ships try to dock at any carrier available. It's a nice feature, but it can also make fighter-heavy fleets a bit sluggish. I recommend to also develop a heavy fleet with cap ships only. Sometimes you need a rapid response force and won't have time to let them all gather their fighters together. A cap ship fleet will usually respond fairly quick. If only one ship without a carrier isn't able to make a jump for whatever reason, you will get a message and the whole fleet takes the long way through warp gates. They try to always stay together, so you can rely on them deploying their full potential all the time, which is a very good thing, but it can also cause some trouble. One time I wanted to repel an invasion, but the fleet just wouldn't jump, because one carrier ran out of fuel and was out of range for a refuel from the commander's battle cruiser. In such an emergency, you can still broadcast the jump order to all fleet ships and just leave the incapable ones behind. This also identifies them and you can fix the issue later. The invasion is the to-go command for aspiring war criminals. Your fleet will spread out and try to destroy any ship and station. This is the fastest way to prepare a sector for takeover. It is best used when you have superior forces because your ships will soon prioritize the destruction of space stations, even if this means to ignore incoming fire, so be careful. If the enemy has a strong presence or heavy battle groups on standby, you should keep your fleet together at first. You may want to lure them into a big decisive battle before swarming out by giving this command. For example, by leaving the fleet in their call to arms state, and just tell the commander to go to the sector center. He jumps in and all fleet ships will follow shortly after. They all still have their escort commands and will stay fairly close to him. If you do this with a jump beacon and a bit off into space, the enemy will creep towards you and you can face them in a tight formation. Fleet commands also affect all ships' turret settings. For example, the call to arms sets all of them to missile defense. By default, they won't open fire on their own. If you don't want that, you can change global turret settings under gameplay options. I added an attack all order to missile defense. They open fire on their own, even in the call to arms state. You can also customize 3 entirely new turret settings to your liking, for boarding operations or whatever you need. The attack order is suited for those situations where you want something to die above anything else. The commander will evaluate the situation and send an appropriate portion of his fleet to take the target out. Plain and simple. It's a command that you can use to influence an invasion to a certain degree without giving direct orders, which would break the ships listening to further fleet commands until the next call to arms. Telling your fleet to guard is basically just sector defense. They relocate and take out hostiles. Small incursions will be met with a wing of fighters or corvettes, without moving cap ships too far away from the commander. This can also get quite handy in offensive operations. The guard command will keep the fleet fairly close to the commander and gives the whole fleet a better chance to face an incoming battle group. At the same time, groups of small ships will be sent out to hunt down enemy security ships and traders. If you're in sector and have adjusted your turret settings, your cap ships will eventually destroy a station and trigger a response. Think of this like an invasion command with the handbrake applied. It's very helpful if you want to keep your fleet together. Protect is the counterpart to attack. The fleet will stay close to the target and take an aggressive escort formation. But be aware that it can take cap ships some time to do the trip if you forbid them to make in-sector jumps. And when you are present, they also struggle to avoid collisions in big battles. Don't try to micromanage heavy fights with this. Most of your ships will be busy and it's best to let them do their jobs. If you want to reinforce a certain position, you should use another fleet and move a new commander there. Patrol works like the guard command, but it can span multiple sectors. Obviously, this is meant to keep your sectors clean. I also found it very useful for large-scale piracy. A raiding fleet of corvettes can be sent to patrol in hostile sectors. They will hunt down traders and drain money from nearby shipyards. Ship construction can be slowed down quite a bit, and without cash, the enemy can't start any invasions. A patrol doesn't attack stations, which should keep additional battle groups from intervening. Fleets can be combined with wings. So if you like to control some ships directly, you can station a wing on a fleet carrier. You can activate them at any given time, or even make them part of the fleet. This way they will also fight on their own, but you can assume control during the fight. The system is very flexible. It works for destroyer fleets, carrier fleets, mixed fleets, whatever comes to your mind. You can use a fighter-heavy fleet to swarm out and invade a sector, while using a heavy fleet to guard the center. Their strong shields give them a good standing in out-of-sector combat calculations. To beat a whole faction, you have to cripple their battle groups, guard their core sectors, pay your allies to invade them, bind and paralyze their navy. Then you will be able to conquer large clusters in one coherent assault.